Well, you know, this was a man who, at the time, I was contemplating, how do I stop today? I can't move on, I can't get to the end. I have a fractured leg, something's wrong. I'm in so much pain. How could I possibly get to Land's End? And then you get this card. What do you do? I did what anybody else would do, and I made a promise to that lady that I would get to the other side.
Welcome to the Spartan Endurance Series on the Spartan Up podcast. How far is too far when it comes to pushing your body with your mind? Today, two classic interviews, Chris Legh and Tony the Fridge. Think about what it really means to push your limits, to control your body with your mind, and then answer in the comments, how far is too far? Today's episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Nutrafol, clinically shown to improve hair growth and thickness naturally. Go to Nutrafol.com and enter the code SPARTAN to save $15 off your first month's subscription. That's Nutrafol.com and the code SPARTAN. Chris Legh won over 96 major events in the world of triathlon, but what he's known for is failure. If you've seen the famous Gatorade commercial with a clip from the finish line of the Hawaii Ironman, Chris Legh is the guy crawling his way towards the finish line. Here's the story.
And we've got Chris, who some people only know as the winner of Coeur d'Alene, but he just told me has won 96.
96. It plays on my mind because I always wanted to get to 100, but I
really?
I haven't quite got there yet. So
96 major events across all disciplines, or in mostly triathlon?
That's sort of triathlon races, yeah. But, I mean, being in the sport a long time, you'd hope those wins would add up, but as I was saying before, I was at a race on the weekend and a guy from New Zealand sort of recognised me, and as I said, that race in Hawaii sort of stood out in his mind. I'm like, well, in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, I have raced okay in the past, so it's but no, it's not a bad thing, obviously, to be remembered by, and it was a great sort of foundation for a career when it happened.
They don't know, that was what year?
1997.
Hawaii. And what place were you in at that point?
I mean, at the finish line, I was still in 6th, but throughout the day, it was sort of the evolution. And probably the reason I stayed in the race was I was a long way back and was having problems, and sort of worked my way to the front of the race. And a lot of people always ask me, how did I keep going? And I think a lot of athletes would. When you're leading or potentially going to win Hawaii, you have every reason to keep pushing on. And so that was sort of, as I said, my motivation to keep moving, and I got to the finishing chute in 6th place and sort of stumbled and carried on a bit there. And
well, so back up. So you come out of the swim, you're in?
Swim, that year was, I mean, pretty average, but my problems started straight away on the bike ride. I just kept having problems keeping nutrition down, and in Hawaii right out to the halfway mark in Harvey, so I mean, approximately 90 kilometres into the race, and I was 8 minutes down from the leaders. I thought to myself, if I could get myself into the race again, that would be the only reason to keep going. And it's like, there's no point being back here and vomiting, and I was ready to shut it down if I didn't put myself into the race. So I ended up getting off the bike with the leaders, and I still remember riding along, passing person after person, and it wasn't long until I sort of looked up and had the lead helicopter there, and I'm like, well, I just shut down 8 minutes on Thomas Hellriegel and Jürgen.
Wow.
I don't feel great, but I may as well keep going. Just based on strengths, my run was strongest out of all those guys, and we had a huge lead on everyone else. And I got into the run and just ran with Thomas. And
so what place are you in at that point? You're off the bike.
Yeah, Jürgen was a little ahead of us in first, and then there was Thomas Hellriegel and myself.
But within minutes, I mean,
we're just running
anybody's
side by side.
Anybody's race at this point.
And Jürgen's more known for his bike ride than his run, so I sort of thought we had him covered. It was a matter of trying to get rid of Thomas, but I just kept having the problems. I'd go through aid station after aid station and grab a drink and then throw it up, and I'd have 10 seconds to catch up again to Thomas, and I'd do that. And after a while, it was, just too much. I just got to about 20k into the run, so almost halfway, and Thomas sort of crept away from me. But the gaps were so big at that point, I was able to hold on to third until about 10 kilometres to go. So,
and you're feeling completely nauseous at
just-
this point. You can't get any fluid down.
nothing. I mean, my stomach was distended, and fortunately, from probably 10 kilometres to go, I can't remember much of. So,
Really?
I mean, that helped in a sense. So, it's funny, as an athlete, I think you practice that scenario so many times in your mind, and it's almost a magnet drawing you to that finish line. And I mean, still, you're sitting in third in Hawaii at age 24. It's like every reason to hang on.
Sure.
And as I said, I always justify that to people when they question me, like, you do the same thing.
At that point, assuming you weren't sick, was the distance, could you have made up the distance?
Oh, easily, yeah. I mean, at that point, we're all just,
Right.
yeah, I mean, it's...
10K to go, you could have still won this thing.
Yeah, but it
Right.
was, when you start
Yeah,
going
yeah,
backwards
sure.
and the field's coming from behind, it was going backwards at that point. In Hawaii, at the Energy Lab, at the bottom is, I think, 10 miles to go. And literally, I mean, anything can happen from that point. So it's funny, I mean, mine's one of many stories like that. And it's what makes Hawaii so great. And I mean, I never cry victim or anything like that. That's what makes it such a storied race. So I still remember laughing with Tim DeBoom, who went on to win it a couple of times, and he caught me along the highway and was sort of having this little battle backwards and forwards, and I got ahead of him. And
He had come from, but
he'd come from behind now, yeah. So he'd come around, and I then passed him again. And I mean, we would have been running so slow, but it just felt so fast. And I didn't want to look behind. I didn't want to show any weakness, and I just kept pushing on and pushing on. And after 10 minutes, I turned around. There's no one there, and he'd pulled out of the race.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
I jokingly said to him one day, I'm like, I blame you for all of that. And he's like, why? And I'm like, well, I was running away from you, and you weren't even there. And so
Right.
if there wasn't that pressure from behind, but yeah, that was probably 8 kilometres to go, 5 miles to go, and I get footage, or at one point NBC would always send me new footage that they'd find, and my real problems sort of started further up the highway than I thought. So the last sort of 3 miles I was sort of zigzagging and
It's just
and
completely
having-
out of it. You don't,
yeah,
even, you don't even remember it.
No, I mean, I remember coming down Palani, which is probably 2 miles to go, and getting onto a Leahy Drive. It then just becomes flashes and memories and voices, and it was sort of got myself to about 50 metres from the finish line, and people often ask me, why didn't you just sit and relax and get the last 50 metres done? But unfortunately, I just pretty much rolled over and passed out.
Right before the finish?
Right before the finish line, and
Wow.
I mean, I would have loved to have finished the race, and
Wow.
fortunately,
But you were out of it. You
I was
couldn't-
done.
Right.
I
I mean, you weren't even coherent. You couldn't have.
No, I mean, if you look at the footage, and when we've got long versions of it, and I've got my wife Sarah there and my dad, and people are quite critical of, I mean, the race directors and my family.
Yep.
I mean, I look fine. I'm talking to them, and there's still one point in the footage where my dad and my wife are like, "Do you want to keep going?" And at this point, it's 60 metres from the finish line, and I'd sort of fallen down a few times, and I just looked at them, and I just said, "Just give me one more chance at this." And I ended up crawling and I mean, sort of uncoordinatedly crawling towards the finish line, but then it's just to a point where I started to kneel and then just sort of slowly fell over. So that was that. But
There were worse ways to be famous.
I survived it. But I mean, I woke up in the medical tent, and I think the athlete in me, I looked up and I'm like, did I finish? I'm like, no. I'm like, oh, all that effort. I'm like,
Yeah.
so no, I didn't get the finisher's medal, and that was Saturday, and sort of things progressed a little worse on Saturday, Sunday, and
They cut you open. They cut out.
well, I went home from the medical tent, and the awards for Hawaii on Sunday, and I wasn't able to go to those, and I went up to the hospital in Kona on Sunday night and had surgery Monday morning. So it was just a consequence of all the dehydration
And the dehydration occurred from training or from that
no,
race?
from the race.
Right.
We still don't know why.
Right.
I was having sort of the issues, but there was a huge DNF rate for the race. It was just a matter of not keeping nutrition down on the day, and the body's an amazing thing. It was shunted the fact my blood volume was so low. body just shunted the blood away from my intestines and to the brain, heart, and lungs, and
keep everything else going.
yeah,
right?
just to keep
right.
keep me pretty much keep alive in a sense, and shunted the blood away from my intestines. So they end up just sort of gangrenous and deprived of oxygen, as sort of as simple as that. So they ended up taking a third of my large intestine out, and yeah, it was, the surgeon said to me going in, he's like, I heard someone had collapsed and I've been waiting for you. I'm like, well, you could have given me a phone call. It hasn't been the greatest 24 hours. So he said he'd go in and have a look, and if he had to operate, he'd go a little further. And I remember waking up on Monday morning and I ran my hand down my stomach and there was a line of 16 staples, and I mean, sort of the way I am, I just laughed. I'm like, what have I done this time? So that was it. They just had to sort of remove that.
So most people complain about like their foot hurts, their shoes don't, right? And they give all these reasons why they can't go for a run or can't go to the gym, and you're like dying, literally dying, right? And still racing like a maniac.
Fortunately, you don't know in that moment. But
no, but I mean, you're still driven, right? You're going to the hospital, you're getting your intestines cut open, but like that's the difference between success and failure.
Yeah,
right? You're playing at a level.
You're playing at that level, but that's why I think, and even since then, and probably more in recent times, I look at endurance racing and have this massive appreciation for every sport. We always try to compare sports, and obviously to be at the top of your sport, you've got to be fantastic. And this year I've been doing all these different races around the world, and they're all different. I mean, mountain biking and duathlon, and I love looking at the personality of athletes and reading books and biographies, and it's endless, really, the stories. And I think that's what it takes, and people embrace that. And I think at times people's tolerance is just pretty damn pathetic.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm thirsty, my mouth's dry, it's hot, it's cold. It's like, what are you talking about? We're just doing a race, just get over it.
After this break, you're going to hear from Tony the Fridge. That's right, Tony the Fridge. He carries refrigerators on his back while he runs ultras. It sounds ridiculous, but it's not. We'll be right back to this interview. But first, a message from today's sponsor, Nutrafol. Nutrafol is physician-formulated to be 100% drug-free. That's why they're on our show. They use natural, medical-grade botanicals in consistently effective dosages so that you get the most reliable results. When it comes to thinning hair, you do not have to choose between natural remedies and remedies that work. Nutrafol is a holistic solution, and it promotes healthier hair and whole-body wellness without drugs or prescriptions. Nutrafol is the hair supplement that goes beyond genetics, and it targets stress, hormones, nutrition, metabolism, and environmental factors that could be impacting your hair. You can grow thicker hair by going to Nutrafol.com and entering the promo code SPARTAN. You'll save $15 off your first month's subscription. This is their best offer anywhere, and it's only available to U.S. customers for a limited time. So one more time, that's Nutrafol.com, Nutrafol.com, and use the code SPARTAN to save that $15. Yeah, it sounds ridiculous. He runs ultras with a fridge on his back. But it's actually a truly powerful story about how you can carry the burden for others and inspire them to tackle difficult challenges and journeys in their lives. Don't forget, let us know in the comments, how far is too far when it comes to pushing your body?
Just purchased a fridge at the Reebok fridge store. We're going to go this way.
We're going to go this way. Come on, Joe.
All right, so the shuffle. Give me the pace.
It's good as well because we've got a wet surface.
Yeah.
So you can just really glide along a little bit. The most important thing is not to lift your legs too high, because when you've got a fridge, the weight increases
with every pound.
With every pound. So we try to take the weight out of our feet.
Sure.
And have a shuffle going on.
How many years ago did you start running with a fridge?
Yeah, about 4 years ago or something like that. 4 years ago. Well, I've never stopped running since I started. That's the problem.
So we're in London, and today we're talking to a man called Tony the Fridge. And you may wonder how you get a name like Tony the Fridge, so let's find out who he is. Tony.
Hi, Delle. How are you doing?
Good to meet you. And this is the fridge.
Yeah, this is the famous Smeg.
Who are you two?
Well, this is my burden, which I've chose to carry across impossible distances and journeys. in my way, it's my way of paying tribute to people who are taking on board their own challenges in life and their own impossible journeys. And hopefully, if I can get through these, I can hopefully inspire others to get through what they've got to get through.
So you're what we call an ultra distance runner. What is an ultra distance?
Well, an ultra distance is anything over a marathon, anything over 26.2 miles.
And you chose to do this carrying a fridge.
Yes.
At what point did you start out doing this?
Well, it started off as a crazy bet, as these things do, or this thing did. Yeah. And, I was wanting to raise money for something I was passionate about. And because I was well known for being reasonably fit, nobody would ever give me a donation for.
So you run marathons before you started putting a fridge on your back?
And so it's always the chap in the office who hasn't run before that gets the money. So I said, right, okay, I'll do it carrying a fridge. And hence the Tony the Fridge story began. And
when was that?
That was 2011.
So you've been doing this for many, many years now?
Yes, but just as it's, the media got hold of it, sponsors got hold of it, an opportunity opened up. My life changed forever. I gave up my job and everything I was doing to chase my dream and raise a lot of money and inspire a lot of people by carrying this crazy contraption on my back. Okay,
so some of our viewers aren't going to know the races that you've done, so can you just tell us some of the big distances that you've done with this fridge?
Yeah, I think I've run around about 2,700 miles now carrying a fridge, and that's an awful lot of fun runs, half marathons, 13 milers, 26 miles, ultra marathons. I famously ran the length of Great Britain through Scotland over the mountains. I went the hard way over the mountains. I didn't go west. I stayed on the east coast and went all the way. Came to London first, said hello to the Queen, and then ran to Land's End.
And you did the whole length of the United Kingdom with this on your back?
I did the whole length of England, particularly in Edinburgh, just before Edinburgh in Scotland. I fell on a dark night. I stepped off the road into a hole and fractured my left femur. And I knew I was finished, and I was kind of thinking, right, this isn't going to end nice. I'm not going to get to Land's End. And I was running along an empty road one day, the day after I fractured my leg, and just contemplating. So you continued running on a broken leg? Yeah. Did you have the fridge on your back at that time? Yes, I was wearing the fridge. I was in the middle of a challenge, and the challenge was a tribute to people fighting cancer. So, I was determined to get as far as I could, physically get. And, in my mind, an ambulance would have to stop the challenge. But the pain was bad, and the road was long, and I knew I'm really going to have to stop. And then this day, as I was running down this road in the Cairngorm Mountains, I saw a woman in white, and she was around about 300 yards from me. This is in the middle of nowhere on a road, very fast road, cars going past at high speed, and there's a lady standing by herself by the road, and I hobbled towards her, thinking, am I dreaming, am I hallucinating here, what is this? And as I got close, I could see this lady was emotional, so now I'm looking either side. There's cliffs. I'm thinking, where's the car? There's been an accident. As I got right up to her, she said, I'm really sorry, Tony, but when I saw you, I got emotional. So I was like, wow, this woman knows who I am. This is really odd. And I was like, what? Do you know me? And she told me who she was. And her son had been messaging me on Facebook. Mm-hmm. He had leukemia. And he was going to meet me en route. I was going to say hello to him. And he'd done a card for me. But sadly, he didn't make it. So...
When you say he didn't make it, what do you mean by that?
Well, sadly, he died before I got to see him. And he'd only died a couple of days earlier. But she wanted to give us the card that he wrote out. And she travelled from Lincoln in England to Scotland to give me this card.
And how did that make you feel?
Well, this was a man who, at the time, I was contemplating, how do I stop today? I can't move on. I can't get to the end. I have a fractured leg. Something's wrong. I'm in so much pain. How can I possibly get to Land's End? And then you get this card. What do you do? I did what anybody else would do, and I made a promise to that lady that I would get to the other side.
And so you continued on a broken leg.
I hobbled. Yes.
How far did you manage?
I managed another 800 miles. I got to Land's End. I ran for 35 days, a marathon a day. I hobbled. Sometimes it took me 14 hours, but I kept going. And, I had already I had a burning fire inside of me of passion about this awful disease and how it's taken so many wonderful people away from our family alone. And then you meet all these other people who've got cancer, and you realise, there's one certainty in life, and that's we're all going to die. My father died instantly. He didn't have a chance to tell us everything he wanted to say. I've met people who died quite suddenly through cancer, and they didn't get to tell their children exactly what they wanted to say, in the way they would. So,
And what have you learnt from that?
I've learned that we're all going to die. So that's why we really have to live. And, I can't remember everything my father told me, but I know how he made me feel. And he gave me an inner strength by how he behaved. And so I've decided that who I was more important than what I said and how much I earned. I didn't want a gravestone that said I had a nice car and a big house and lots of money. And although I did once have those things, I give it up for being somebody different. I just want to live on in every day as if I'm going to die, as if today is the last day. And hopefully I've left a big enough footprint in the snow for my children to realise what you need to do and for what you need to focus on, and that's on who you are and not what you are. I don't do this for medals. I don't do it for accolades or tributes. It doesn't sit comfortable with me.
So live as though it's the last.
Live every day as if it was your last one. Amazing. Because one day you're going to be right.
I've been involved in the ultra circuit for a long time, and I've heard his name like a legend bandied around in that field for a long, long time. So it's an absolute pleasure to find out what this true story is. So you are a really gritty, determined individual listening to that story. Have you always been like this?
Well, you mentioned there, Delle, the ultra scene, which I am on in these days. But for me, running ultras began when I was a teenager. My father would take us on hiking expeditions. We had a big car, never used it. So we would hike 30, 40 miles to wherever we were going to camp.
So you were raised to be gritty?
Yes, it was expected of us. My father worked in a coal mine, a mile underground, up to his chest in cold water, filthy water, in multiple explosions, things like that. So he went to work. We expected that work was toil and struggle. And, a good walk in the fresh air after working in a coal mine is probably a good thing to do, health-wise. But after my father died, I had an awful period where even as a teenager I would hide under the bed when I got emotional, just to hide from the world. And people would wonder where I was. They'd go looking for me. And then one day my brother, if you go on the 7th step of our staircase and you looked left into my bedroom, you could see under the bed and see me. And he spotted me this day. And I was traumatized that my hiding place from the world was gone. So the next phase of my sadness and grief for my father was that when I got upset, I would run.
Was that your hiding place?
Yeah. But I never, I would run all the way to where we would camp. I would run, walk, never stopping, never looking back I wasn't interested in what was behind me because that's what I was running away from.
And how old were you then?
13.
13.
So I ran my first ultra when I was 13 years old, and never counted the miles. You know, we go for a long walk, go for a long run, and you know, the wonderful beauty in ultra distance running is that, you know, you never think of the finish line because it'll kill you, it'll stop you, it's too far away, so that's gone. You don't think about how far you've run because then you'll just feel more tired. You live in the now, right centered in the moment, you know, just thinking about the next step and the step after that, considering and assessing how you're feeling right now, but never thinking about how you're going to feel, because that can change in moments. So,
So you've got this determination and grit from a real story. Do you think people can learn to be this way?
Absolutely.
What do you think it takes for somebody to learn to be able to do this kind of thing in their lives?
I believe that you learn by doing. You know, people say to me, Tony, how do you do what you do? Well, I've got a reason why. That's, you know, these crazy challenges that I've become legendary for, I had a reason to do that. You know how I got that 800 miles on a fractured leg. When you know the real story behind it, you can actually say, do you know what? Yeah, I would have got there too.
You have to keep doing it.
Yeah, you know, there's sometimes things are just way bigger than you. And, you know, for the Tony the Fridge story, it's not really about me. It's a story of community and people getting behind this crazy guy, you know, and then the crazy guy paying back that tribute by getting through, or is giving it all he's got. You know, I don't have a choice when I step out with that fridge on. I'm getting to the other side.
What's the biggest lesson that you've learned about yourself over all those miles?
The biggest lesson that I've learned is that I'm capable of absolutely anything. If I'd only known, I'm now 50, if I'd known when I was 15 that I was capable of this, I could have done so many more things with my life. We are all capable of so much more. You know, people talk about personal bests. I really can't cope with people talking about personal bests because you're already capping yourself. You know, as soon as you get towards that personal best, your legs get heavy. Oh God, this is my personal best. No, it's not. No, it's not. If you had a reason that was bigger than you to get there, your personal best would be shattered. If you had a life saving reason to get 100 miles and you had no vehicle and your children were at the other side, don't tell me you wouldn't get there. I don't believe you.
And what advice would you have? We talk about obstacle immunity in the Spartan world. What advice would you have for somebody just stepping out with something that they're faced with that they see as a real obstacle or difficulty? Maybe their first 10K, their first Spartan race, something in their daily lives. What advice would you give them?
But the first thing is remember that you can do it. You absolutely can do it. Don't let anybody ever tell you that you can't. Don't discuss it with anybody. Just do it. But the most important thing is never have that conversation with your inner child. Just get up, get on with it, live in the moment. Don't consider how far you've got to go or how far you've been. Live in the now and stay focused, and you'll get through anything.
One more thing. We have pulled together some of the most powerful moments in Spartan Up podcast history, and we've put them all together on one page. You can find it at spartan.com/toughbible. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Endurance Series on Spartan Up Podcast. Spartan Up is your partner in resilience for mind, body, and spirit. We're here 3 days every week. Tuesdays, you can find Joe DeSena, founder and CEO of Spartan, interviewing biohackers, business leaders, authors, and athletes. Thursdays and Saturdays, catch episodes from our DECA, Endurance, Trail, Combat, and La Ruta series. Do you know someone who needs a little nudge? Maybe they could use some motivation, tactics to be stronger, healthier, happier, more successful. Tell them about our show. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment. We want to know who's watching and who's listening. Thanks. See you next time. Today's episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Nutrafol, clinically shown to improve hair growth and thickness naturally. Go to Nutrafol.com and enter the code SPARTAN to save $15 off your first month's subscription. That's NUTRAFOL.com and the code SPARTAN.